Hey everybody, thanks for joining me. My name's David and this is my channel. Today we're going to talk about or tackle that big question that everybody asks all the time. What is God? In Tai Chi, it's the question, what is Chi? Everybody has a hard time answering sometimes. So I want to do the best I can from my experience of what this is so I can share it with all of you and of course to receive it back for myself. Well, Chi is the interconnectivity of everything. That's what Chi is, that life force. So in Tai Chi, you have all the pieces of your body at first, and then over time of doing Qigong and doing Tai Chi, you start realizing there's an interconnectivity of everything. That underneath it all, when we relax and allow and let go of all control, all of a sudden this interconnected force starts turning on. And it's this spiraling elastic type of force. We call it the force in Tai Chi. Now, same thing in our life. When we start realizing that all the people and all the circumstances and all the situations are interconnected in our life, and no longer are they separate with separate meanings, but they're flowing for a purpose, then you start understanding that there's an interconnectivity that's going on, and we would call that interconnectivity God, or I call it the Father. That's what I call it. It's very endearing. It makes me feel really, really good. But you can call it your inner being. You can call it source energy, your soul. But the more that, just like in Tai Chi, the more we use the idea of the force, and we don't say it's me, it's the force. I use the force, or I use Jin, or I use my Chi. Do you see? There's this idea of claiming it as the interconnectivity, the energy, the universal forces that are allowing me to put everything together. And that's really important. Otherwise, I would say it's me, but it wasn't me because I didn't have it before. So where did it come from? Or it's in my arm. And sometimes we pump up our body to be big so I can say it's me doing this. And that's the understanding of the humility of all of this. See, we're all connected. All of us are one mind, many, many bodies. And the only way we're going to come back is through understanding the connectivity that brings us all together, not the bodies, not the personality. Does that make sense a little bit? So that's why Jesus said, of myself I can do nothing. It is the Father inside me that doeth everything. And that's a very true statement, and it's a very important statement to understand. Just like, once again, in Tai Chi, it's not me, it's the force inside me that I'm aligned with that's allowing me to have this effortless power. And it's the same thing in your life. So because of that, what I recommend is to give everything over to this energy to the best of your ability, so you can let go of that seeming part of us, that ego part of us that wants to take responsibility, or rather wants to be responsible for all this greatness and all this love and all this joy, so to speak. And if you don't, it's going to sneak in there and try to take over everything. Like we said in the last video, the specifics of the mind from the ego's perspective always comes from the past. The body-mind can't access anything else but the past, what has already happened, like Bashar would say. Not what's going to happen, but what has already happened is what the mind accesses. So that ego part of us only has access to what has happened, the past. So in order to access that bigger part, that broader perspective that has all the information and knows way more of what's going on, so we can start getting tuned in with that, we have to address it by name, by idea. So, for example, we take our little guy again. Now I can say this guy is really fun and exciting. Now if I say he's fun and exciting, I'd have to use the past to be able to say it. Well, it reminds me of something fun and exciting, so therefore I'm using the past to say he's fun and exciting. Does that make sense? Now, it's easy to say this guy looks pretty cool, but someone might hate gnomes, and then now all of a sudden they don't like it, or they don't like flowers, or it doesn't talk to them. Now, that's the past that's doing that. That's called judgment. Now, if I say it's him doing it, then now I can judge them based on if I like them or not. Make sense? If you say it's the Father, or it's source, or it's my inner being, then he would now have the meaning of your inner being, and therefore he would be that of your inner being or of your source, which would only be good and flowing and happy and joyful. And now you wouldn't use the past to judge him. You would just see him that way. And you can say, I choose to see him as I see my source. I choose to see him as I see my inner being. It does no good to judge him based on the past association and bring your vibration down. Remember, the name of the game is vibration. The name of the game is to allow your vibration to rise so your thoughts will match that of your higher perspective, so you can then enjoy your life, not only in the moment, but invite new things in. So it doesn't do any good for us to judge anything out there based on the past, even though we do it quite regularly. But the more you understand how you're doing it, based on looking at it in a specific way by looking at it. That's the gnome, or that's the dog, or that's the weather, or that's the sun. Do you see? Or that's the picture. It's a very specific thing. But the more you use the idea of source, or whatever you decide to call this interconnectivity, the force itself, whatever you decide to call it, if you start to blanket it over all things and people, you're going to see a huge difference. Because now, as you look at a picture and you say, I see source in you, well, what are you going to see in it? You're not going to see something you don't like, because that part of you doesn't have that. So that's why I say, when I look out and say, I see the Father in all things, I see the Father in the sunset, that means I see its beauty. I see its grandeur. I see its expansiveness. And if I look at a picture and I see, I see the Father in there, I see the flowing, I see the majesticness, the magic of it, the wonderfulness of it. Do you see? Now, if I look at someone who is frustrated or upset and I see the Father in them, then of course I see their strength and their power and their resolve. And now I won't see the other part of them. And then I will treat them as such. Do you see? And that's what Jesus did. As he walked around, he saw that Father. He called it Abba, Abba, in everybody and everyone. He said the kingdom is within you. The connectivity, interconnectivity of who you are is within you. And I see only the greatest part of you, only that flowing part of you, only the strength and the beauty and the love inside you, because I see the interconnectivity of all of us, and I see that energy, that Abba, that brings us all together inside you, bringing us together. Does that make sense? It kind of reminds me of music. I can play piano all day long and play the song, but without the timing, it doesn't become a song. There needs to be something that connects it all together, right? As I move to the timing, it just magically transforms from the piano, me playing it, and the music that wants to come through. And the more we understand that there is a part that we don't see sometimes, and as we look at someone and we look at ourselves and we see us as separate without that specific part, that part of us that connects us together, then you're only going to see the ego. Because I assure you, and this is so important, as Jesus said, you are serving a master. If you do not see the source, if you do not see that loving part, whatever you call it, within the two of you, then you will see your ego pulling you guys apart. That's the way it is. You can't see just two of us because we are connected. So we have created this idea of that ego part of us that we serve on a regular basis from our mind, from our thoughts, that is consistently trying to find a way to judge everything or to separate from it or to see something missing consistently in our life. Why do you think we say, I want to turn that mind off, that monkey mind, that, you see, we're serving it. You want to know how to turn it off? Serve the other part. Because you got to serve one thing. You're not by yourself in this. And that needs to be understood. There is no just me. I am connected to universe. I'm connected to universal forces, and I am connected to that which is love, which has no opposite. Since it has no opposite, no matter what I judge out there, I only judge it based on the Father. I only judge it based on that source energy. Therefore, it must be love. Now you have nothing but forgiveness of what he was talking about, grace. Does that make sense? Now you can see why he said, love your enemies. You see? Why he said, love your neighbor as you love yourself, and love your Father with all of your might. Love God. So that's the idea of God. God is what brings us all together. That's why he said God is love. The more you see God, the more you see source, it doesn't matter what it is. It's not outside. It's the interconnectivity. It's the chi. It's the flow of energy that brings us all together. It's the magnet that pulls us all in. It's the laws of the universe. It's everything, all everywhere present. When he said, where two or more gather, I am there with you. That's what he was talking about. So remember, we have two choices. You can either look out in the world and enjoy your life and see it all as separate and serve the ego and listen to the mind activity and then push against it and push against yourself in the process. Or we can start seeing source in everything. And I recommend it. It's not as hard as you think. Everybody's like, but Dave, I have to do that 24/7. Yes, that's what conscious is. Being conscious. Seeing consciousness. Even consciousness. But I recommend give it a personal name for yourself. There needs to be this higher being, higher force, higher interconnectivity of magnetism that moves and flows us all together. And the more you recognize it, the more you will let go of that ego part. But one of them have to be present. And the more you understand that, the more you'll make the choice. And that's why when I look out, I say, I see only the Father in everything. So I find only the beauty, only the goodness, only the flow, only the joy, that which has no opposite. If I find myself low and judging someone, I stop. How do I feel? Oh, I'm not seeing the Father. I must be seeing the ego. I don't want to see the ego in that person. If I'm seeing them beaten up, if I'm seeing them sad, if I'm seeing them lost, if I'm seeing them lacking, I'm looking at them through the ego's eyes. Because even when they're connected, other people tend to connect to that ego part of them and take away from themselves and put it in other people or put it in their outside world, what they're missing. We don't have to. We can just simply make a habit of saying, I see only source in everything. I see only my soul, my inner being in all things. Therefore, I see only the wholeness. And now when you find someone that they don't feel very holy, you can just see them that way anyway. And as you see them that way, you give them the opportunity to say, maybe I can move back into who I am too and stop focusing on the problem so much and move back here. You see, we're here to stand as an example, one with source energy, one with the interconnectivity of all that we are, all that is, and then give other people the opportunity to also do the same if they like. And the more we stand as an example of love or joy or strength or flow or beauty to all equally, regardless of what they're experiencing and regardless of what is being reflected back to them, they will then know that they have the opportunity to do the same. Because nothing has to change out there. The more you see the Father in all things, the more you see as Jesus saw, the more you will feel it coming back to you. And the more you'll be filling in the gaps of what seems to be missing with the whole or holiness of all that we are, that is in our mind and in our heart. And then you will receive that back. And that is what God is. And that is what the idea of chi and life is. Give life to that which seems to be death. Do you see? Give life to that which seems to be lost and deteriorating. Let go of this other source that doesn't exist and see only the source of life. And then you will see that that ego part of us wants to separate by seeing what's missing. Once it sees what's missing, that's what our idea of death, lack, loss is. Something needs to be missing in order to see it that way. But the more you see only the wholeness, the holiness of all that we are, the kingdom, you see, the kingdom of heaven, God's kingdom, you see, the interconnectivity of all of us, which has no opposite, then now you will receive that back. So go forth and put this into practice to the best of your ability. See things not from the past based on judgment, but see it based on what it really is. And I recommend bring that Father, bring that source, bring that inner being, whatever you call it, bring it with you. So that way you can say, it is not me. It is the Father. It is the energy. It is that source inside me that does everything for me. I hope this helps. And as always, it is up to you what you receive. Keep the comments coming. Thank you guys for your love. Like this video if it's speaking to you. And make sure to subscribe. And as always, my unconditional love and appreciation to all of you.